Welcome to another episode of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college basketball. The month of March has finally arrived, and I think it's safe to say it's that time of year where dreams become nightmares and when legends are born. It's a fun time of the year. It's going to be nonstop action. We're going to have day games all across from 9 a.m. Pacific probably to midnight all day long starting on Thursday, and then it's going to keep going on until the NCAA tournament. We got a guest to talk all things college hoops and probably one of the sharpest minds in all of college basketball. He's one of the few bracketologists out there that not only watches the Power Sixes, but I think safe to say he's a mid-major junkie as well. You know, doing all of the college basketball schedules year round for bracketeer.org. I am pleased to welcome in Rocco Miller. Rocco, thanks for taking some time out of your day. I imagine this is your 20th show of the day, but hey, I appreciate you taking some time for me today.
No problem. No, I'm glad it worked out. It's all good. It's fun because there's so many great platforms in all the different geographies of the country. There's so many different levels of college basketball. Obviously, I think there's three dominant leagues right now when you look at the SEC and then the Big Ten and the Big 12. And there's a drop off after that. The ACC and the Big East have to be honest with themselves and realize that they're a clear cut below. And then from there, we get into our world, Nick, where we get the Mountain West, the WCC out here, more like the American, the Atlantic 10 out in the East at this level, and a little bit of the top of the Missouri Valley in there and the SoCon as well. And then you're really into the mid and low majors after that. So there's so many different topics. There's so many different geographies. There's so many different tiers of college basketball that almost any show that I show up on, we're always talking about something different. That's what makes it really fun.
Yeah, well, I'm a Mountain West guy. I do a bunch of work for San Jose State. I don't know if you came out to more than 2 games for San Jose State this year, but when we encountered, you were at our worst loss of the year and our best win this season, ironically enough. I don't know how that worked out, but
somebody gave me a script. Somebody gave me a script, and I picked the right 2 to go to.
Right, yeah, the season opener versus Western Illinois, and then the New Mexico win, which I think, as crazy as it sounds, is New Mexico still, it's their worst loss, which I just want to kind of talk, just big picture Mountain West, because obviously it's not the same level as it was last year. They got 6 years, in their 25th anniversary as a league. They got 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. This year, they're not on that level, but they're still very good. They're still very talented. They're got a lot of old veteran players that have been in the league for a long time. And, New Mexico just clinched a share of the regular season title last night in a big road win versus the Nevada Wolfpack. Just your thoughts on just like the Mountain West big picture here. I know we could go through down every team's resume and where they stand heading into today's action on a Wednesday afternoon, but just overall, just the Mountain West, where do things stand right now? Because there are a lot of teams right now that are on the bubble right now that, Mountain West tournament next week is going to be massive for those teams.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the hay, as I like to say, is already in the barn. It's a 31 game schedule. We've gotten through 29, 30 of those 31 regular season games. And so we pretty much know what these teams are, whether it's the Mountain West or anywhere in the country. And so, there are these last couple chances to make an impression if you're that close to the bubble. And the Mountain West, as they almost annually do, have a few cliffhangers, as you hinted at. But first of all, New Mexico won the league. They swept Utah State, arguably the second best team in the league. And, they've beaten everybody, really. They beat Boise at home. They beat San Diego State at home, lost to those 2 on the road. They also sprinkled in a win over a VCU team. That was a game I was at the Pit, which aged extremely well. VCU is now top 30 in the net. That road win at Nevada still squeezes into quad 1, as does their win at Colorado State, a team that's absolutely on fire right now. And so, New Mexico is going to be a tournament team. You can feel good about that. They're if you're just trying to figure out who's going to be in or out or who's at risk, one of the easiest ways to kind of look at a quick tool is strength of resume. It's called the SOR. It's available on ESPN's website. You can also go to NCAA's website. They have that and the wins above bubble. And New Mexico in those two areas are low 30s, 31 in the strength resume, 33 wins above bubble. And so they're really not at risk at all. Their last game of the year is a home game against UNLV. And in the Mountain West tournament, we already know who the 8 and the 9 seeds are. It is going to be your San Jose State Spartans as the 8 and Wyoming as the 9. So their worst case scenario would be to lose to UNLV at home and lose to one of those two in Vegas. They're still getting in with those two losses. Now, from there, I think you go to Utah State. They do need to beat Air Force. I think a home loss to Air Force would set the resume sideways, to say the least, I guess is the best word. They've leaked a little bit of oil just in their final scores, going to Colorado State and losing by 27 on Saturday wasn't a great look for the Aggies. Also losing at home against New Mexico at the start of February, that was a 19-point home loss, a little bit alarming. And, they've lost at UNLV, but they really don't have a bad loss per se. And with that beautiful 23-6 record against Division I, with those beautiful road wins at St. Mary's, who won the WCC very convincingly, and at San Diego State, the Aggies are sitting in really solid position. Just don't blow it against Air Force. They should be dancing as well. And then we get into a little bit more of the fun with San Diego State. They've now kind of played themselves onto the bubble in some ways. I still like their profile compared to a lot of the other options nationally, mainly because they beat Houston, which is a very loud win, obviously a top 3 team. And they beat Creighton in that same tournament back in Thanksgiving at the NIL players era, Nick. But they've leaked some oil throughout conference play. They got swept by UNLV. They lost at home to Utah State, which you never want to take a home loss. Also losing at home pretty convincingly to Gonzaga. Gonzaga team that should be pretty safe now, but some of those losses kind of make you question the Aztecs. They're obviously a younger team this year, still trying to find their way. They've looked good in spots. They've looked bad in spots. They barely beat San Jose State both times. They struggled at Wyoming, but those are wins. I think as long as San Diego State can just finish out the string with no more bad losses, they should be able to get in there. But I think a lot of their numbers are starting to point toward and by the way, they're going to end the year at home against Nevada this weekend. But some of their numbers right now are pointing towards a trip to Dayton. And so we'll see how the rest of the bubble shakes out. Some of that is out of their control. But right now, like you look at the wins above bubble this morning, and they're one spot above North Carolina, a North Carolina team that most people are still out on. And they're below North Carolina in the resume. So they're very much down there in the mid-40s level of resume, and it's getting dicey for the Aztecs. However, because of that win over Houston and Creighton, I just want to reemphasize, Aztecs should find their way in the tournament. It just might have to start in Dayton.
Yeah, that's massive for San Diego State. We already know Brian Dutcher in March is just incredible. He's just overall just an incredible coach. He's been doing it there now for 8 seasons. And, it's crazy to think that the Aztecs, I would say, maybe past year's teams, this year's team is a little bit younger, but, they have been more vulnerable on the road, I'd say, the past 2 years than what we've seen, with the other older Dutcher teams when they made it to the national championship and such. But it's just amazing if they have one of those losses to San Jose State, or they had to win at the Horn versus Air Force on the road. Like it's crazy how that team has just avoided the bad loss in a sense. And it's another thing too is, for San Diego State, I feel like next week in that Mountain West tournament, they're going to have the crowd, and they've made it to the championship game every year under Dutcher. So even if they don't win the championship game, I feel like
they'll be in good shape.
They'll
be in good shape. And part of the reason why is the committee starts their voting and their process of evaluating teams Wednesday morning of that week. So the Mountain West tournament will just be getting started with early round action in real time chronologically when the committee's starting their process. So by the time we get to Friday night, which is the Mountain West semifinals, a lot of the field will have been established. Most of probably almost all the field, except for maybe those last couple spots. And by Saturday, I think by Saturday morning, I think they clean that all up and they feel good about their final at-large teams. So from there, they're just building contingency brackets in case there's bid steals. And that's really all they're working on through the rest of Saturday and into Sunday. And that's why it's unfortunate, really, because that's why you've seen some of these championship games really not move the needle for anybody's seed, whether it's at the Mountain West level or at other levels as well. You saw the year when Texas A&M in the SEC tournament made that crazy run to the championship game, and everybody's like, wow, they have so many great wins now. You have to put the Aggies in, and the committee still had them out. And it was the only way you could describe that, Nick, is that the fact that the committee had already wrapped up that part of the process. And so, for San Diego State, all of their heavyweight is done. Just don't give the committee more reasons like last night to go back and look, because every time you lose, you're going to go back on. It's like having to go back to the mechanic and go back and get your car looked at. They're going to go back under the hood and pick you apart again. And just don't give the committee a reason to do that, and they'll be okay.
Yeah, that lost at UNLV last night, which I have to say, UNLV, this is kind of like the third year in a row now where like they're just getting hot at the right time, and it's kind of crazy over there with UNLV and what they're doing. I mean, everyone kind of finds themselves like everyone tries to buy into UNLV at this time of year, like, oh, they're capable of winning the 4 games in 4 days, and then ironically enough, they just get the terrible draw in the first round and they lose like at Boise State round 1 2 years ago and overtime, or they blew the double-digit lead last year for San Diego State. So that's always the Jekyll and Hyde team I've always called in the Mountain West, where you don't know what you're going to get from them on any given night. But hey, Rocco, this weekend, interested to get your take here on just the Boise State and Colorado State game. I know Colorado State didn't have the non-conference schedule that they wanted. The loss to Colorado, the loss to Washington, the home loss to UC Riverside at home. But this Colorado State team, I watch them and I'm like, wow, like their depth is really good. They got a Neat Clifford. I don't know how he hasn't won Mountain West Player of the Week one of these weeks. It's insane to me. But that Colorado State team is very good under Nico Medved, and they're starting to slowly, crawl into maybe the bubble. I'm interested to get your take on that. And versus Boise State this weekend on the road in Boise, they're one of the hottest teams in the Mountain West.
Yeah, I think Colorado State's, first of all, credit to the Rams and Nico and the staff there. I know a lot of those guys doing a tremendous job down the stretch, getting those guys motivated. Moby's been a place where nobody's been able to win since the end of that calendar year in 2024, where they lost at home to UC Riverside on a half-court shot. They lose to New Mexico on December 28th when the students weren't there. But with the students there and all these other big games, they destroyed Utah State by 27. They squeezed it out in January over Boise State. They handled San Diego State February 8th. So they've done their business. The problem for Colorado State to get into the actual NCAA tournament is you need to have damage away from home. And they have a little bit, but it's not anything that's going to blow the committee away. Their best wins at Nevada, which, again, it's a good road win. It's number 74. They backed that up with a win at UNLV, number 93 as their top 2 road wins. So it's definitely still better than a little bit of the bubble teams they're compared to, but it's not like neither of those teams are tournament level. And you're looking for tournament level wins, and the only ones that the Rams have are at home. So it probably ends up being just a little too much to get them in at this point. Now, go to Boise State. Here's the problem with that. They go to Boise State, they're probably going to knock Boise State out. And then they're still – so they would add a third really good road win and one to be most proud of, because Boise State is 45th in net, and net matters for your opponents. So if they beat them, they'll probably still be top 50, and they'll have a top 50 road win. They'll be really interesting for sure. I think they definitely get discussed. But I think they've got to make a run in Vegas on top of that. And the committee has taught us over the years, and it's, again, all of my work is centered on what I believe the committee is going to do, and really just studying the things that they care about is how my work has been centered for the last 2 decades. So my opinion, they look like a tournament team right now, but my opinion doesn't matter. So that's my point. My point is the committee has taught us that you can't just build your resume within this conference, the Mountain West. You need to do some things outside the conference. They did beat TCU in overtime back in November, but TCU is not going to make the field. They lost last night. They're pretty much drawing dead themselves. And of course, that loss at Colorado, their rival, by 17 doesn't look good. Washington had probably what's going to end up being the last place record in the Big Ten. That's not good. And then, of course, the UC Riverside loss. It's just more bad than good still from a resume standpoint, but it doesn't speak to how dangerous they are. And they are very much alive to win the Mountain West tournament.
Yeah, and I'll say this, that the Mountain West, in a sense, you do all this scheduling stuff during the offseason. They're kind of in a tricky spot because
Right.
that you're not gonna get all these teams, the quality teams that are gonna boost your resume. They're not gonna come to your building because it's almost like a scheduled loss in a sense when you factor in those crowds and the home court environment. So you kind of almost have to play like these MTEs and neutrals, against the Power 6 teams, if you will. To get that resume boosting win. And, unfortunately for Colorado State, I mean, they just haven't been able to, take care of it. And it's not aging well for them right now.
They did a good job, though. I mean, they got the VCU game in Vegas. They just lost it. They lost by 8. Then they did an amazing job to get into a game. They had to travel down to Mississippi to play Ole Miss, but just to get that opportunity. I mean, getting into the tournament is just about creating as many opportunities as you can find. And I was impressed they were even able to get that game with Ole Miss. And, of course, they went down there and lost by 15, but they had the chance. And so, Brian Cooley, one of the assistant coaches there, works hard on that schedule. I thought he did a phenomenal job. It's just, that in those chances, you're also, the other part is the league not being what it was last year, right? Like last year, you could build a resume just in conference and maybe play your way in. And this year you couldn't. So they had to get one of those 2 wins, it looks like, in hindsight. But again, the bubble's kind of falling apart in certain ways. Last night was a good night for some of those teams. So we'll see how it shakes out. I think if Colorado State keeps winning, then we're going to have to keep talking about them and looking at them. And that's a good thing for the Rams.
Yeah, the SEC teams just keep on winning. The Texas, I know Oklahoma's got themselves a big one tonight versus Missouri. And man, that SEC conference this year is just, it's incredible. Like when it's all said and done, they probably only going to get like 2 or 3 teams, missing the tournament. We'll see. But that's just been, it's must see TV every night. I mean, I know for a West Coast guy and a mid-major guy, I always like to shine some light on the mid-majors always, but man, it's hard to ignore what that conference is doing every single night. And, it's just, and it's quality ball.
It is. Well, I like to say they're getting a great return on their investment. I mean, nobody's spending money on their rosters quite like the SEC is, and it's showing up in the results. It's showing up when you watch the games and you see, like Saturday, I turn on the South Carolina-Arkansas game, and South Carolina is absolutely destroying the Razorbacks. They're physical, they're big, they're tough, defensive. And you could look at that South Carolina team and convince yourself just from an eye test, that team could win the Mountain West, and they're in last place in the SEC. So it's like you kind of understand it when you start to just see the type of athletes, the type of skill that league has. I went down to Athens, Georgia a couple of weeks ago and was at I covered the Missouri-Georgia game, and that Missouri team is lights out. And that same Georgia team that Missouri made look bad on their home court that day has bounced back. Georgia's won 3 in a row, and now they're on the right side of the bubble. And yeah, it's just so much talent, like all over the league. I think like 5 years ago, a lot of that talent would have been more dispersed across many different leagues. And of course, with the Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12, joining the SEC, there's a consolidation in these leagues. So I think the committee's going to have a hard job to decipher. I think it's going to just come down to basic win percentage. Right now, I just think Oklahoma and Texas, for example, have lost too much. But Arkansas's win last night gets them in a better win percentage position for one day. But once they lose again, it's going to flip again. So it just keeps yo-yoing for a few of those teams. Georgia and Vanderbilt were in that same boat, but now they're on the good side. And we're almost to the finish line. So we'll see where it wraps up. But it looks like they will get at least 12, which if they do, that breaks the record. The record was 11 with the old Big East in 2009, I believe. So no matter what, we're getting a record. It's just a matter of how bad they're going to shatter the record with the bids.
Fair enough. And, we're talking about the SEC here and all, how they can nearly get the entire conference in the NCAA tournament. That's going to worry a team. That's going to worry maybe a Big West type of conference in a little bit, right? Like the whole, I know the UC Irvine, UC San Diego conversation, I know has been, it's been a nice little back and forth because those two mid-major teams are awesome. I mean, the UC San Diego, I mean, they have like the net ranking of like what Indiana State was last year. And I'd probably say the Triton team is better this year because of what they do defensively. But Irvine, the way that they played the zone with Russell Turner and, the continuity that they've built there, just with that roster and that starting five. I mean, I hope we get round 3 in the Big West tourney and hopefully it's in the championship game. And if Irvine wins the championship, is UC San Diego's case good enough for an at-large? I mean, I feel like that'd be quite the kerfuffle there for the committee there.
I hope not. I hope they would just be as comfortable with UC San Diego as I am, because I love this team. I think they've earned it. The difference between them and Indiana State as well, just from a resume point of view, is Indiana State didn't have a win against the field. UC San Diego had that. They went to a place called the Spectrum, Nick, that you know very well, up in Logan, Utah, and they won up there. That's a tournament level road win. That's something Indiana State did not have. That's why the Indiana State conundrum was so confusing. But UC San Diego has a solidified resume. You add in the road UC Irvine win, and they have 2 like really upper echelon quad 1 road wins. Beyond if Irvine makes it or not, they're very close, like bubble wise themselves. So you add in all the other good things that UC San Diego has been able to do throughout the year. The fact that they perform at such a high level, I think they just can't take a landmine loss in that tournament. I agree with that. But the way they're playing right now, it's hard to see them losing at all to anybody. So, where I've been stuck a couple times this last week is so much of the bubble, whether it's North Carolina or a couple of these SEC teams that just have too many losses. Also, now there's 2 Big Ten teams with too many losses, like Ohio State and Nebraska. They just played each other last night. And so they're both kind of sitting there needing another win. If it stays like that and we don't get any bid steals, Irvine might have a path to an at-large with a close loss in the championship. I certainly wouldn't depend on that, but we're running out of bubble options, and I almost put them in the field on Monday. That's how crazy things are getting. But I think in reality, Irvine's probably going to have to win the Big West tournament, whether you look at it from a few bids are going to get stolen perspective, or some of these teams from the power leagues that have way bigger games than Irvine gets to play. Once they win 1 or 2 of those, there goes Irvine's potential spot. That's another good way to look at it. And I think the third one is they took that home loss to Northridge right after they lost to UC San Diego. So that gives them 3 losses in quad 3. I know it's such a stupid bone to have to pick because overall they're so dominant. They're 15-3 away from Irvine. They've only lost the 2 games at home. So I think they're still worthy of selection. They won at UC San Diego, a top 35 road win. And they won at Northern Iowa. They won at CSUN. They won at Belmont. They've got really good road wins. I would rather take a team like Irvine personally that's going to win more than 25 games than a team that's like 17-15 or 18-14. But I just don't think in my heart of hearts, I don't believe there's enough voices like mine in the committee. So I'm not going to forecast it.
Yeah, I had to pick your brain on that one because, for me as a broadcaster, and that broadcast San Jose State games, we always get one of the Big West teams in the non-conference schedule every year. So I saw Irvine last year, and that roster is pretty much intact from what it was from last year to this year, and they look even better this year. I saw Cal Poly this year, and I know Cal Poly is, a rebuilding team, but they've, messed around with some teams a little bit. So like that Big West conference has been really fun to watch this year. I think it doesn't get enough respect. And when you got UC San Diego, UC Irvine at the top, Northridge has been a good story this year. And that Riverside team, I know the metrics don't speak for them, but they're still good themselves. So yeah, I think that conference, I think just overall just needs a little bit more respect. And, I don't think it maybe gets it maybe from the computer rankings, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's been rough because Fullerton's having a historically bad year, and Long Beach State's been rebuilding. And there's a couple examples like that. Hawaii's fallen apart. They had a decent start to the year. UC Davis has been really inconsistent. So I think those teams at the bottom are dragging the league down. Even Cal Poly, I agree with you. I think they're very dangerous. They started 0-8 to start league play and took some – they beat Stanford in non-conference play, so we know they're dangerous. And they beat Seattle University, who has a lot of talent, a team that actually beat UC San Diego. So, there's good talent across the board. We know UC Santa Barbara can play. That team's got a high ceiling when they're clicking. So I agree with you as a whole. It's just from a numbers standpoint, the bottom of the league gets dragged down when a team like Fullerton just has a historically bad year. And, even Bakersfield's a lot better, getting up into the top 250 at least. They used to be consistently in the 300s. So they've done their part. It's just, for all the numbers to work, you need the whole league to rise up.
Yeah, and I think that's been some of the issue, I think, with the Mountain West and why it's not where it was last year in a sense, because, the bottom just wasn't great in their non-conference. We mentioned the Cal Poly team where, I got to, take a deep dive on that Cal Poly team this year because I broadcasted the game for them for San Jose State when we played them. But I kind of got to understand like their whole vision with Mike DeGeorge and, basically taking that whole Division II roster from Colorado Mesa and, just plopping it into San Luis Obispo. But the same kind of team that was doing that this year is Drake out in the Missouri Valley, right?
Yeah.
With Ben McCollum. He was doing the Northwest Missouri State route where he won all those Division II titles. And he basically plopped his whole roster to Drake. And all of a sudden they're 27-3. They're one of the slowest paced teams in the country. I love watching this team and I love the success that they're having with it. And for the Missouri Valley, I know we have this conversation every year where it's always a one bid league, but you could honestly, whoever's in the championship game, the loser, I always feel bad for because you could make a strong case for them in the NCAA tournament every year. Indiana State was that victim last year when, they lost and, Drake was victorious in the Missouri Valley tournament. Is Drake and, one of these other teams like Bradley or the Northern Iowa, I know that's like the top three in that conference. And when I watch those teams, I certainly think so. But, what's is the Missouri Valley situation the same as it's always going to be where it's a one bid league, or does Drake have themselves a chance here, to if they lose the championship game here, you only have 3 losses and your non-conference was really good. I feel like, I don't know. They bring themselves an interesting case to the table if they do lose the Missouri Valley, championship game.
Yeah, I mean, I feel very comfortable with Drake based on the fact that they played Vanderbilt in a game where it was a high stakes game. It was the championship game of the Charleston Classic, everything on the line in terms of a mid-major, hopeful for an at-large. We didn't know all of that at the time, but the way Drake played that week, we were starting to think, okay, these guys are pretty good. And they go out and beat Vanderbilt by 11, and that's aged well, especially these last couple of weeks. Vanderbilt's played their way solidly in the field despite last night's home loss. They went to Texas A&M a week ago and got their big road win that they absolutely had to have. And then Vanderbilt backed that up last Saturday by beating Missouri in overtime. So we now know Vanderbilt's going to be a tournament team. That's so big for Drake because, like I talked about with UC San Diego, if you beat a team away from home, and again, like I try to back other bracketologists or analysts, whoever I'm talking to in the college hoops community, up a little bit and say, take a look at the big picture and look at their story. Like what is their story and why should we include them into our beautiful $8 billion event? Well, Drake's got an incredible story. Yeah. And I think, you can't just look at a win over Vanderbilt and just keep moving on when you go to the resume. Like, you have to present it the way I presented it. It's like, this game was a huge game. It was for the championship, and they dominated them. And this is an SEC level, a team that performed well in the SEC caliber team. Now, here's the other thing I love about Drake. Their 5 hardest games, they're 5-0. You know, they won at Bradley. They won the Kansas State game that I covered out in Kansas City. They won at their rivals, Northern Iowa. Although controversial, they got the win. They won at Illinois State. So those are their 5 toughest games away from Des Moines. They got all 5 of them. You go to their overall record away from home, they're 13-1, Nick. I mean, this team is phenomenal. Now, the only ugly, of course, they had the home loss to Murray State. Bradley came into Knapp Center and beat them as well. And then they stubbed their toe at UIC. That's their only road loss of the whole season. But to me, the top of that resume with those 5 big wins, 5-0 in the top 2 quads, I mean, put them in no matter what happens this week. That's where I stand. Now, again, to be safe, and I understand the committee has to come to an agreement, I think they just, at least win their first game this week to be sure. Personally, I would love to see a 2-bid Valley. So if Bradley beats Drake for the title, I think we're in great shape for that. If Bradley beats somebody else like Belmont for the title and Drake goes out early, I still think we might get it. I would be very heartbroken if Drake didn't get in. If UC San Diego doesn't get in, I would still be heartbroken because I know how good they are. But I would also the win at Utah State is not as loud as the win over Vanderbilt, in my opinion, just because Vanderbilt's in the SEC.
Fair enough. Yeah, that Drake team, if they do get in, which I'm with you, I really hope that they get in. Like, whoever draws that team is could be in due for a long day, because even those guys were Division II guys. They have the Player of the Year in Bennett Sturts. They got the Coach of the Year in Ben McCollum from the Missouri Valley that was just announced. And that slow type of ball, like if they dictate the pace, as long as they don't draw like one of those fast electrifying teams,
right?
Like that's gonna be one of those teams where you're like, oh boy, like did we really just draw them? And I know there's a bunch of teams like that. Like St. Mary's is always a tough out, and kind of play that same style ball stylistically. So it should be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I think Drake too. Just watching them and covering them in person, they're so deliberate. They always control what's happening out there, and it's super impressive because they are pretty undersized. It would be crazy if they played. I had them playing Clemson, I think, in my last bracket, which was Monday, and that'd be really tough because Clemson attacks the interior like really well. I watched them kind of carve up San Francisco in that second half when Clemson played San Francisco down in Daytona Beach. So that'd be really interesting. But I think with Drake, they just don't let the moment ever get to them. They're so composed. I think it goes back to all those years together at Northwest Missouri State. Plus, they added some good athletic pieces like Cam Manuau came from Wyoming. Yeah, and he's plugged in perfectly for the system. And they just make clutch plays. It's almost like they invite tight games, and they feel most teams don't get very comfortable in tight games. They don't figure out who their go-to guys are or what those plays they want to run are, and they settle for bad shots and they end up going to overtime. Drake's not that way. Drake's extremely deliberate. They run really good stuff. They know how to they suck it up and get a stop when they need a stop. They've gone to overtime 5 times this year, and they're 5-0 in overtime. And in their 3 losses, Nick, they've lost by 4, 7, and 2. So you cannot blow them out. Like, they will not be blown out. They use their timeouts wisely, and they stay composed. I guess that's my larger point. And to me, that's why I think they're capable of advancing 1 round at a time. And don't be surprised if they leak into the Elite 8.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't be shocked on it. And obviously it depends on the bracket and the draw and the matchups. And that matters for every single team. But I'm with you there. They got the talent, and they're extremely well coached. Rocco, before we close things out here, I know you're monitoring all the conference tournaments closely. I see you tweeting out on the Sun Belt conference tournaments, the round 1, and all the crazy brackets, and how all these conferences like to run their tournament brackets. But Yeah, is there any conference tourney that you're just excited to watch? Maybe not from a bracketology perspective, but maybe just from an entertainment standpoint, where you're like, wow, this is from maybe round one of the championship game. I'm going to be locked in here. Is there one of those tournaments, maybe more than another, that you're looking at here this week before we start all the chaos?
Well, you have to start with Arch Madness. I mean, to me, Arch Madness is the if it's not the best, the Big East would be the best. And those two out of all 31 leagues are, it's just different. I mean, I love the Mountain West Tournament. I love the WCC. I'm there every year. I love them all, like you said. But there's a mystique about Arch Madness. There's always classic games. The Friday of Arch Madness, I get little butterflies in my stomach, and we're here on the West Coast. I'm from the West Coast like you. So for us, it starts early, right around 9:30 a.m. The first game's at 10 a.m. and Drake will be in that game this year. So it's always the 1 seed. And it seems like a lot of those years, maybe not as many recently, we've had the 8-9 team flirt with an upset disaster of the 1, which would be the scenario this year. But then throughout the day, like, you get some awesome games. The 4-5 game and the 2-7 and the 3-6 are all, some years all 4 of them are down to the wire. And then throughout the weekend, it's such an amazing event. The semis will be great, and the championship gets to be on big CBS. It's so good for the league. And then when you get to meet people around the league, I know people at all the programs there, just getting to know them over all these years. It's like a family reunion. So I'm a little sad I won't be making it. I still haven't made it. I do the mock committee on this weekend almost every year. So we are starting that tomorrow, but I'll be obviously watching all of it from my TV in the corner. And I just get, it's so nostalgic. Arch Madness is made for epic moments. I'm from a little bit of an older generation where, I remember 2004, like, the Valley was sending 5 teams to the tournament. It was like the Mountain West at that time. And teams like Southern Illinois were going to the Sweet 16 regularly. I think they went 2 or 3 out of 5 years. And there's so much history, and you can just tell the crowd is amazing. People are out there, at the St. Louis venue for like 12 hours, having a great time, having lots of beverages. So it's super entertaining, no matter how that thing unfolds.
I love it. So you're on the Arch Madness Missouri Valley tournament, and I'll give you one. And I know that you're
CAA is going to be really good this year too.
CAA.
I don't know which. I love what Towson did in the regular season, but Wilmington's very hungry to win this thing. Charleston has the most offensive talent. Monmouth is a really good dark horse. And then there's a lot of other, like, scrappy teams like Drexel, Northeastern, Hampton, that could really, like, throw the whole thing upside down.
I'm personally, like, just from a fan standpoint, I'm rooting for that Wilmington team. That team's been flirting for so many years now, and they got a great home court, but that team needs to get to the tournament. I know they've either been in the semifinal or the championship game the past couple of years, and then they fall just short. So, rooting for the Seahawks there. But the Big Sky tournament, the Starch Madness, is always the chaotic one.
It's going to be
always
good.
The chaotic one. The number 1 seed goes down every single year, and Northern Colorado's the 1 seed, Montana's the 2 seed, even though they shared the regular season title. And their bracket is always kind of weird because the 3, 4, 5, 6 seeds are in the 3rd round, and then the 1 and 2 have to play in the 2nd round, but they obviously get out of the 2nd round and they go to the semifinals. Just an uncharacteristic bracket, but that's always a conference tournament that always gets blown up. I know Eastern Washington's was kind of the team there the past couple of years. They never got over the hump.
Yeah.
And I really like that Montana team this year quite a bit, with Travis DeCuire and the Grizzlies, but I feel like, the Idaho State team's a dark horse. They got the point guard, Dylan Darling, the Wazoo transfer, who's, just putting up points like crazy. And that Northern Colorado team with Hawthorne at point guard, the USF transfer, has been really good too. So I'm interested to just see how that thing turns out. And you can't obviously ignore Montana State there with, just the culture that they've been running there the past 4 years plus.
No doubt. No, you said it well. And I think with Idaho State too, I'm really intrigued because they are This will be the first time under Ryan Looney. I think it's his 4th year where they really have a competitive roster. You named it, but they're playing close to home. Pocatello to Boise. That they should get. Hopefully, they get some strong Bengal support in nearby Boise. So that's a team definitely to keep your eye on. Whoever wins that Idaho State Montana State game, I think they're going to be playing with some house money. And if it is Idaho State, I think you'll see even more fans there by Tuesday night, which is semifinal Tuesday. I think when it comes to the bottom half of the bracket, Portland State just beat Montana down the stretch, and Portland State by far has the best defense in this league, at least from a metrics perspective, and they've been able to control pace and tempo through their great D. So if they make enough shots, they've got the defense to do it. Defense travels. Could be an opportunity for the Vikings to break through.
Yeah, that's a fun tournament. I honestly couldn't tell you what's going to happen in that one because
right.
I could see upsets coming like crazy in Starch Madness. But Rocco, before we let you go here, is there any, we talked about the bubble quite a bit here, but is there any, just overarching like storylines that, just we need to be aware of here, just for the conference tournaments, whether it's potential bid stealers or anything like that could really throw things, on Selection Sunday, completely upside down here. Anything like that the audience should just be aware of, while we monitor all these tournaments.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we covered UC San Diego and Drake already. Those are going to be big ones. Obviously Drake, the most urgent and imminent with the tournament starting on Thursday of this week. But I would also add, Memphis is the only team in the American projected to make the field right now. So if anybody other than Memphis wins the American, of course, there goes a bid, right? So that's huge. And always the interesting thing about the American, I feel like we deal with this every year. That tournament, that's one of the last championship games before Selection Sunday bracket show begins, which is always 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. So the committee, no matter who's in that championship game, is going to have to build what we call contingency brackets. And we saw it last year. UAB, I think, won it and got a 12. That'll probably be something similar this year. So watch out for that. First and foremost, that's the most likely of the bid steals. Then we have VCU, who's been really dominant the last month and a half. In my opinion, I think they've played their way into a bid, but if they're not the automatic qualifier, you know what that means, Nick? They have to take another loss somewhere. So based on whoever they lose to go into the at-large pool will determine if VCU still belongs as an at-large or not. I have a feeling they'll stay there, but it's really close with them. They're a little different than UC San Diego and Drake because they did not get that big win against a tournament level team, but they do have 5 road wins against top 2 quads, and they have amazing performance metrics, which again, that didn't help Indiana State last year. So I think VCU is a real cliffhanger no matter what. But if VCU stays in and the Atlantic 10 has another champion win the tournament, you're going to lose another spot in the bracket due to the Atlantic 10 tournament. So certainly a critical one. And then I would just say outside of that, I think McNeese is going to absolutely pound people they're playing the conference tournament at home again. So the Southland, if McNeese is in a game that's even a single digit game, I would be surprised. So you might see some shocking. You might hear me shocked on Twitter if McNeese is in a tight game at any point. But yeah, those are just some high level thoughts. Of course, I think the Mountain West. I don't know if we touched it, but Boise State is so close to the bubble that I think they need to operate as if they're not getting in, so they stay hungry, get that last win over Colorado State, and play well in Vegas. I just am not 100% sold on the resume. We've been putting them as one of the last teams in. So between them, Colorado State, and of course, red hot UNLV, we know UNLV will be the 6th seed. So they will play either Boise or Colorado State in their first game. So that 6-3 game in the Mountain West tournament will knock one of those 2 hopefuls out, whoever wins it. And those are the 3 to watch, I think, for a Mountain West bid steal.
There you have it, Rocco Miller. Thanks for your time, Rocco. Before we sign off with you, where can people find all your work and what you're doing between now and till the NCAA tournament and all the way till the off season, because I know you really don't have an off season, my man.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Rocco Miller 8 on Twitter /X, as well as Blue Sky, for anybody that ventures over there. And then my website, bracketeer.org. Mondays and Fridays are the bracket update days, so make sure to check each Monday and Friday. Now, again, with everything coming to a head, probably have a couple extra updates mixed in Monday and Friday of next week. Just depending on if there are upsets or not. If there are no upsets, there's probably no reason to do an update. So I'll keep you posted on the website as well. And then my primary show with Field of 68 is called Fielding the 68. We're on every Monday and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific time. You'll be able to catch that live on all the Field of 68 platforms through Twitter, YouTube, etc. And next week, I believe we'll do 4 shows: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, at that same 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then finally, Selection Sunday, Jeff Goodman and myself will be reacting to the live bracket on Field of 68. So make sure to either check that out, or if you want to watch CBS, I won't blame you. You can come back and rewatch that, but we have a fun time with that every year, because you'll get my authentic reactions to where the real committee put these teams.
I love it. And I'll certainly be tuning into that. And, all of your good stuff that you'll be doing on that network. So definitely looking forward to that. But Rocco, thanks for taking some time out of your day and your busy day, and enjoy all the carnage that we're going to be having here, because it's going to be nuts.
I love it. That's why we're here, baby. Now, anytime, Nick, it's great to be on with you and see you again. I hope to see you in Vegas.
Yeah, for sure. We will be at the Mountain West tournament for the entirety of the Mountain West men's conference tournament, and we'll be doing a whole bunch of stuff down there in Las Vegas. So that will do it for this episode of the Sports Sentiment. Again, I am your host, Nick Urias, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.